So welcome back to the Athletes to Athletes podcast. Today we have a nice special guest with us, Division I football player, Mr. Brandon Wimbush. Brandon, really appreciate you coming on. Want to start off just by, kind of handing it off to you and, tell us where you're from, a little bit about your background and a little bit about you.
Yeah, Ryan, thanks so much, man. Really appreciate you guys having me on and the opportunity to share a little bit about my story. I'm originally from northern parts of New Jersey. Grew up, my brother and I, my mom raised the two of us. I went on to go through the public school ranks, and then until high school, I went to St. Peter's Prep, which is the only Jesuit institution in the state of New Jersey. So that was obviously an honor and a privilege to have the opportunity to attend, a pretty illustrious school for high school, and then obviously went on to win the Gatorade State Player of the Year in 2014, playing football there, and then played with some really phenomenal athletes, including Minkah Fitzpatrick, who's now the highest paid safety in the NFL, right? So got to compete at the highest level, played against the likes of Rashawn Gary and Jabril Peppers. So Jersey football, shout out to Jersey football, and then continued my playing career and got to go play at the University of Notre Dame, where I spent 4 years between 2015 and 2019 and graduated with my accounting degree and made the most out of that experience and shook, a lot of good hands that, with people that now support me in my entrepreneur endeavors. I got benched my senior year. Obviously it's a business and you got to produce and perform. And I guess I wasn't performing up to the standards that, the coaches needed. So got benched. And then after I graduated in 2019, I transferred to the University of Central Florida, where I played my last eligible college athletic year with Coach Heupel. And after UCF had gone 12-0, and then I think it was 12-1 the next year. So got to be a part of two really phenomenal programs, two programs who are kind of in different states, if you will, right? Notre Dame's been around for however many years and has a consistent winning program. And then UCF is up and coming. And obviously they're kind of on the brink of doing phenomenal things themselves over the last couple of years. So, and then brings me to today, where I'm now running a company in the name, image, and likeness space. Obviously I was a couple of years too old to have been fully indulged and had the experience of monetizing my own name, image, and likeness. But I'm really excited about what we've built at Mogul. That's built to educate and support college athletes today.
So yeah, you've had a career that has been, ups and downs, obviously. You're Gatorade Player of the Year, go on to play at a very high level, and then, you mentioned you getting benched in the business part of it. Let's kind of start with in the high school ranks. What's it like for you being at a prep school and playing against guys that, you gave the shout out to Jersey football, playing against guys that are doing it on such a high level, and how much does that fuel you to continue to push and want to get to that next level, seeing these guys that you're playing against?
Yeah, Ryan, I think it speaks volumes to just the caliber of athlete who are obviously in Jersey and what's being kind of groomed from New Jersey, right? But it's also the opportunity to go to camps like the Elite 11 and play against guys and compete against guys like Kyler Murray and Drew Lock and some of these guys who are dominating in the NFL today. So for me, that on top of the competitive landscape here in Jersey was even more compelling for me, right? Being able to line myself up against those guys and be included in that top 11 at that elite camp was really special for me. But it also showed me that I had the opportunity to really play at a high level and potentially play on Sundays. But as you said, man, Jersey football has been top of the top for the last couple of decades. And so it's always fun getting to go up against guys who you now see on Sundays, and you get to kind of joke with people in your network that, yeah, I used to run through these guys and throw all over them, right? But so, yeah, definitely a cool experience nonetheless.
Yeah. As a high school athlete, being, the top of the top, getting the Gatorade award at the end of your career, how did you handle that pressure and that scrutiny? I mean, there's not a lot of guys that, I mean, there's obviously tons of 5-star, 4-star, all types of recruits, but there's only one that get that Gatorade award. There's only one guy that plaque, that trophy goes to. How do you handle this as a teenager along with schoolwork and trying to balance a personal life as a teenager, and just so many lights are kind of shining on you. So how do you handle that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think as a high school athlete, you kind of don't know any better, right? So you're kind of just going with the wind, if you will, and all these new things are being thrown at you. But it's really on you, and you kind of have to understand that this is part of the process, right? Is balancing these components and these aspects of your life. And so I think I did a pretty good job, and I had a really good supporting team around me, including coaches and family members, my mom, my father, my brother, people who I grew up with, my godparents, right? Like I had all these people who were supporting me through that entire process, right? And it's not letting that get to your head. And again, as an 18-year-old, I literally didn't know any better, and I kind of wish it was always that way, where it was just kind of you're playing ball and you're playing sport, and it's not a business, and you're just kind of having fun, right? I think we all, once we get older, we kind of recognize the advantage and the feeling you had when you were just playing sport. And I wish that stayed with you until forever. But I think, again, I was in a really good system at St. Peter's Prep here, and really good structure that allowed me to really thrive on all levels. And then obviously going into Notre Dame, it was a pretty easy transition, just given obviously the Catholic and the spiritual side of it, but also kind of just the cultural side of it.
So yeah, as you transition onto college, right? There's obviously a number of schools that are calling for you. How do you navigate that recruiting process? Do you have, you just mentioned your support system that you had. Who's the person that you're going to saying, okay, I have Notre Dame saying this, I have Florida State saying this, I have this coach saying this. Who are you bouncing these different kind of proposals off of, and how are you making that decision of where you want to head to?
Yeah, Ryan, I think for me and for the guys who played at my high school, we were really fortunate to have a head coach and who served also as our athletic director for over 35 years, right? So he's been through the ringer when it comes to the recruiting process, and he's had some guys, continue to go play in the NFL, and even before me, obviously. So he's seen it all from that standpoint, understanding what coaches want, when coaches are coming in that are genuine, what situation looks the best for a player like myself, right? So he was the guy that we all could kind of turn to in terms of, seeking out good guidance and advice along the recruiting process, because he's been through it so many times. So he's helped so many people in his life, and I was really fortunate to have him in my corner.
Mm-hmm. So what mentally as a teenager, you get that first call from that first D1 program, that first offer, and you're kind of reeling, right? And you're like, okay, I got this one, and you keep getting them. I was
like 14 years old, man. It was I hadn't
exactly. I was gonna say, what age are you when this happens?
Yeah, I was 14, man. We were throwing one summer out. I remember where I was, and I think it was like a 7-on-7. We just got finished up, and I think I was back up at the time. And again, I don't even think I definitely hadn't played a varsity game. And so my head coach came over to me, and he was like, these 3 or 5 schools want to offer you. I think it was Rutgers, Temple, and Maryland that were part of the group that, were my 3 initial offers. And that's a byproduct of being a Jersey guy, right? I think these coaches and these schools that are in the Northeast region obviously want to hone in on the talent that's here in Jersey, because again, we have really good talent. And so, they're doing their best to get in and knock down these doors early, and try to get the attention of some of these top talent.
How did you handle that as a 14-year-old kid?
Again, man, I had no idea, right? So I'm just kind of going with the flow and excited I got offers. Social media is kind of just starting to boom out. And so I think I was one of those kids tweeting, I'm really blessed and honored to have this offer. And, hopefully that's subsided by now. But, I don't, yeah, again, I don't think I knew any better, but I was super excited, knew that I had to continue to work. I was playing baseball, playing other sports, and sometimes you have to make a decision on, is this going to be your route, to the college level and to a free academic scholarship, right? And athletic scholarship. So had to just keep continuing to work and not let it get to my head.
Yeah. And did you give up those other sports and start to focus on football?
Yeah, I think after my sophomore year, I started to kind of, weed out and just started, running track as it would help me with my speed and some of the, running techniques and whatnot. But baseball was my original love. And so it was hard for me to kind of let that go and give that up. But again, I started to see traction on the football field and started to understand that this was going to be my, my ticket to playing college sports.
So when you finally, you're 14 when that first one comes. Obviously, you still have a number of years before you decide where you're going to go and anything else. When you make that first visit, whether it's official or unofficial visit, what's it like for you stepping onto a college campus as a teenager, just seeing everything that they're trying to offer you?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember, man. I don't know if it was either Ohio State. I want to say it was Ohio State. It was kind of the first camp and campus tour that I had taken, and it was with Urban Meyer and Coach Tom Herman, who was the head coach at Texas. He was the quarterback coach up there, and so you're walking into a quarterback room with like Brett, what's his name, Braxton Miller, and JT Barrett and Cardell Jones, right, and I forget the other guy's name, but 4 really good quarterbacks, right? And obviously black quarterbacks. So you're walking into a room that's, looks familiar, and you're super fired up that, you think you can have an opportunity to come here and play, and you're thrown to guys like Braxton Berrios at a camp, and it's giving you kind of these goosebump feelings of, I can potentially play at the highest level, right? And again, I'm only a sophomore at this time, so really don't know any better, but those campus tours, man, once you're at that young age and you're touring those campuses like Ohio State and Penn State and Virginia Tech and Stanford, you're getting everything thrown at you left and right? So you have to have that support system around you that's going to help you kind of make the right decision for yourself.
So how did you make that decision? And, what were your final 5 schools, and how did you make the decision between them?
Yeah, so I was originally committed to Penn State, actually. So it's a little bit of a fun fact. My mom went there. My aunt went there. My dad's side of the family's from that area. So it was tough when I decommitted. But I think my top 5 were Penn State, Ohio State, Virginia Tech, University of Miami, and I don't know. I don't even know. I don't remember the last one. And then Stanford and Notre Dame came in late into the picture for me. And we had played a game on ESPN on 9/11 actually, and then I got a call from who's now the head coach of the Green Bay Packers, Matt LaFleur, who's the quarterback coach at the time at Notre Dame, and he wanted me to come and take a visit out to South Bend, and I said, why not, right? And this was something that for me, it was a decision on academics. Is based on academics. Is based on different components of my life that I wanted to excel in. And I thought Notre Dame, at the end of the day, offered me the best opportunity to achieve some of those goals.
It's pretty cool. And once you get to Notre Dame, how much different is it from the atmosphere that you grew up in? Because you went to a prep school,
Yep.
and so you were around people that were already like-minded. And it's, obviously Notre Dame is going to be that same sort of atmosphere. What was it like for you to balance all those things as a new student and as a new student athlete?
Yeah, man. I not often do you look back on it, but when I do, I'm obviously very appreciative of the time I spent at St. Peter's Prep, because I do think it formed me and it gave me a great foundation heading into another Catholic institution. And again, like you said, the people were very like-minded. The guys and the girls who choose that school from an athletic standpoint understand the greater benefits that come with attending an institution like Notre Dame, and Notre Dame specifically. It's one of none, right? Really, in this world, going to that school. So definitely something tough to balance as a 18-year-old walking on campus, being free for the first time, walking into a new environment in the Midwest, and really not knowing what you're getting yourself into, but finding a way to adapt. Right, all these athletes do it, and it takes a little bit of time. But again, I go back to my support system on if there was anything that I ever needed. Right, I can come back and know that I had people that were supporting me. But definitely made it easier, right, my transition than some of my peers who had maybe gone the public school route or whatnot.
So academically, is it harder? I mean, it's college, so it's supposed to be harder, right? But is it harder for you to make that transition academically? And how do you start to kind of hone in on those things? I mean, you have a degree in accounting now, so how do you start to really hone in on the schoolwork aspect of all of it?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest. I think that was the biggest kind of hurdle, if you will. And it wasn't so much of a hurdle. It was more of like, what's going to be my route of academic, right? Of academia. Am I going to want to go the hard route and pick a degree that's going to propel me once I leave school, or do I want to do something that's going to, I'm going to be comfortable and kind of cruise through my 4 years here? So I chose the former, and obviously accounting is definitely one of the toughest degrees at Notre Dame, and so it was no roller coaster for me that over the 4 years, and so that took a lot of time and commitment outside of athletics, right? It's a completely, those are two individual jobs, if you will, on these campuses, especially at Notre Dame. So understanding the commitment, talking to people who have gone through that process before you, right, and seeing how they went about their business, right, and it makes it easier when you're. I had the opportunity to room with guys like Corey Robinson, who was the second African-American student body president ever at Notre Dame. And, I don't know the stat on, an athlete being or serving as a student athlete body president, but I'm sure it's, very few, if that. Mm-hmm. So, guys like that and people that you're able to look up to and kind of who've gone through the ranks, that definitely helps kind of understand what you want from your experience at a school like Notre Dame.
So kind of in the same vein with the academic side, when you have a game, a Monday night game or something like a Friday night game, and you guys have to travel, how are you balancing that? And what type of academic support do you guys get when you're on the road, for days at a time?
Yeah, so it's a good question. And actually, I just talked to the athletic director at Notre Dame about it, and I think it's baked into our schedule where they do a really phenomenal job of making sure that we don't miss more than 3 days of classes over the course of the semester or the course of the season. So on that end, right, it's on us to obviously still be up to speed because we're not dropping behind as much. Obviously, just fatigue is probably the biggest thing. Is like being able to wake up, have a workout, go to class, then get to practice, right? And then do study hall and have to do that 5-6 days a week is probably the biggest thing that you kind of had to work out and figure out and adapt for yourself.
So what's the team culture like when you get there, and how do you see it evolve? And you have a number of coaches. I mean, you look at any academic website or any athletic website, football team is going to have sometimes triple the amount of coaches than anybody else. Obviously, as a quarterback, you're only working with a select few, but you just have such a huge culture and such an ecosystem as a football player, especially on a Division I campus. So what's that culture like for you?
Yeah, it's Notre Dame. So as much as, you're a player and as much as you think school, obviously they care about you, but you're not going to be a huge culture shifter or, at a school like Notre Dame, right? You're going to go in, you're going to kind of succumb to what's already been built and what's already been established as a foundation, right? But obviously you're going to go in with your own kind of spice, right? And that's what I think I did. And that's what I think a lot of people did, especially in the quarterback room. You had guys like Malik Zaire from Ohio and Deshaun Kaiser also from Ohio. And I went into a room with those two guys leading the way and battling it out. So you kind of get to see, man, I went through I went through a couple coaching changes. I went through a 4-8 Notre Dame season, which obviously is very infrequent, right? I went through quarterback competitions, multiple. I went through quarterback injuries. I went through a TV show, right? I think we were on, I forget what is it, HBO Max or something like that. So I've seen a lot at Notre Dame my first couple of years. And so that definitely primed me for my time in terms of, when I was able to kind of take over the reins and starting position.
So one of the things you just mentioned is, coaching changes. How do you guys deal with that? Because on the D1 level, it's a lot different. There's always going to be a bigger contract somewhere or something. How do you guys deal with that from year to year, kind of going into your seasons of, hopefully the coach that even recruited you is still going to be on staff, right? How do you deal with those huge changes?
Yeah, I think my biggest thing, and I've stayed consistent with this for high school athletes, is, really not to consider. I mean, it's hard to say, right? But do the best you can to consider the school and the environment and what you're walking into outside of the coaching and the sport, right? So, because that's volatile, that's going to fluctuate. And like you said, those coaches, they see a bigger dollar sign in front of them. They're going to do what they have to do for their families and put themselves in a better position at any point, right? It doesn't really matter who you are. And so, for example, I as I mentioned earlier in this conversation, Matt LaFleur recruited me to Notre Dame, and great guy. I love him. But I called him, told him I was going to committed, got to signing day, called him that morning, signed my letter of intent. And then about 6 hours later, he had called me back and said, I'm taking a new job at the Atlanta Falcons. Right. So, it's stories like that, that's where my idea of make sure that you're going to a university, for the academics, for the culture, and not for a coach, right? Because again, they can just up and leave. So, and then we've had, big shifts, right? We went 4-8 at Notre Dame, and then we had an entire clean house into the 2017 season. And that's when I, had the opportunity to start at quarterback. So completely new kind of environment, right? Completely new weight room, staff, coaching staff, offensive coordinator, quarterback coach, dynamic change. Can you stay mentally prepared? I think is the biggest thing in all aspects. And that's just in life is are you prepared individually, right, to do the best that you can and to perform the best that you can. Doesn't really matter what's going on externally. So that's how I think you can always approach coaching changes.
So that 2017 season, when you're the starter, that first game, that atmosphere, how do you stay focused? I mean, you're playing in huge stadiums, probably more people than you've played in front of, ever. How do you not kind of succumb to the moment, but take it in and realize this is a big deal. This is my first start.
Yeah, I think you got to be grateful for it, right? You got to understand that, this is a big, really big deal that I'm starting quarterback for the University of Notre Dame, right? So first thing is appreciating it, understanding it, being aware of it, right? Taking it all in and going through that awe moment. But then, again, back to preparation is understanding that you've prepared for this moment your entire life. You've been playing on big stages for your entire life, maybe not as big as this, but that I am prepared, that I've put in the time leading up to game one, especially. I think we have about, so many months leading up to it, right? Including camp, and you're just kind of ready to, you're just ready to let it all loose, right? Everybody plays kind of their best and worst game, first game of the year. So there's all that pent up energy. But again, I think it comes down to preparation and knowing that everybody else, those other 10 guys on the offense and those 11 guys on the other side of the ball had prepared as much as you had.
So one of the things that you mentioned in the open is, you played, you were a starter, and then, you guessed you didn't produce. And you said it's a business. Is that something that you learned as you got older, or is it something that became more nuanced to you now that you're done playing?
I think it's something I learned. I mean, I was always aware, and I think I'm a pretty self-aware guy, right? So, performance is one thing, and understanding that you gotta perform, and you're playing in front of 90,000 physically, but you're playing in front of 5-10 million audience on a weekly basis, right? And people want to see performance, people want to see entertainment, and they want to see wins, especially at Notre Dame, right? And we were winning, but you got to do it at a high level. You got to do it at the highest of high levels, right? Week in and week out. So like I said, I was always self-aware, but and coaches have to make decisions that they feel that put the best team out there to win games on a weekly basis.
So how hard was it then, and what was the process like when you transferred?
I was fortunate, man. I had gone through the recruiting process again as a 4 or 5 star, whatever. So I was fortunate. I was blessed to have these coaches' connections coming out of high school that obviously were still in prominent positions at schools like Boston College and Miami and UCLA and even Ohio State that still wanted to, use my talent and have my talent, right? Figure out a way to utilize it. So, compared to what kids are going through today with the transfer portal, and I think that was the first year that the transfer portal had come out, but I don't even think I submitted my name or whatnot. It was just kind of, all right, we have these personal connections that I've built over the last 5 years. Let's still tap into them. But UCF, my decision, I think a lot of it weighed on my family, being closer to my family for a year, having them being able to come see me play a little bit easier, being in a central location, and all those good, all that jazz.
So when you get to UCF, any culture shock? Because obviously, those schools are very different.
Yeah.
What's that change for you?
Yeah, you're going down to play with a bunch of Florida boys, man. That's it. Definitely a culture shock. Definitely a different locker room. Grateful for both experiences. The good and bad in both locker rooms. Teach you a lot. Give you good understanding of what's going on in different parts of the country. What's going on in different, in different programs, and how different programs are being run. How different coaches run different programs. Right. So that was a really good insight. Obviously, for me, it helped expand my personal network as well, given the business that I'm running.
So, as your college career is kind of coming to a close, what kind of conversations are you having? Or is it, NFL conversations? Is it, career path? Where are you looking as a, college senior about to, head off into a new direction?
Yeah, you're looking to play, man. You put in all this time and effort and sweat and blood and tears into a game, and you want to go play at the highest level, and you think you have the talent. You have the talent to do it, right? So that was where my mind was. And so, after January of 2020, I started to train, thinking that I would have an opportunity, but obviously nothing came to fruition. But was still obviously super grateful for that experience of going through training, meeting those people, along that process, having Rock Nation help me, and all of that meant the world to me.
So how do you make the decision to stop playing, and decide I'm going to use my degree instead of, maybe trying to be, an undrafted free agent here or there? How do you kind of make that decision to go that route that you did?
Yeah, I was going through training for about 8 to 10 months, and just kind of, got mid-season. I was like, all right, I don't think anything's going to happen now. And, part of you is like, do I give it another go next year, right? Do I change something or train harder or put myself in a better position? Like, how do I figure that out? Or do I just, I had an opportunity, a good friend had approached me with a business idea. And so it's like, all right, this, I could potentially make more money doing this thing with my brain and keep my brain safe than been out there on the football field. But obviously, my love for the game was still there, and it was a really tough decision for me to make. And I just, at that point,
Did
I
you
just
ever
thought
think
it was
of,
time.
going into coaching or anything else like that?
Nah, man, I can't do coaching. I don't know. I'm not. The lifestyle is really tough, and I commend all the coaches, especially at the college that do that.
Yeah. So now you're on to new things. You're on to Mogul. How does all of it come to fruition?
Yeah. So again, my business partner who graduated from Notre Dame a couple years ahead of me had originally written up the business plan, which is what it is today, which is just a two-sided marketplace connecting athletes to brands, giving them a resource to do this in an efficient and effective manner, essentially is what it is, in a holistic manner. He had wrote this up in 2019, so kind of way before the court ruling, the Supreme Court ruling back in July of 2021. And so, he had approached me. We had known each other since high school. He went to a rival high school, and he approached me with the opportunity to kind of head up the athletic department, if you will, of this business venture. And so, he had understood that I had the athlete experience, right, and background to build a good product here for athletes and what they desire out of this. So that's how it came together, and we started talking about it in early 2020 and kind of started building from there and built a team out, fundraised a little bit, got the idea, groomed it a little bit, and it is what it is today.
So when you guys first start out, how hard is it as a new company, and how have you seen things grow over these years?
It's not easy. It's definitely the hardest thing I've ever done, man. To run a company on a day-to-day basis, right? It's a new environment for me. It's a completely new, as an athlete, you're part of a team, but there's just something that's, completely different. And so I have a really good business partner who's come from a banking background and understands, kind of the company dynamics and the corporate dynamics. And that helps me a lot. That helps the rest of our young team and employees a lot as well. But in the space in general, NIL has grown so much, man. Companies are spending way more in the space, wanting to work with college athletes. They see the value of advertising and marketing with college athletes way more than they did. That educational kind of curve and that learning curve for everybody has definitely accelerated from year one to now being into year two. So excited to continue to see the growth there. Our platform has grown so much. We're now working with roughly 4,000 athletes and 1,500 different brands, right? So we've had some really good and strong traction in the early parts of
So when you guys first start out as opposed to now, what was that first initial pitch that he gave to you that made you want to get involved with Mogul?
Yeah, I think it was, our first conversation was him wanting to do something else. And it was about venture capital. So, that was the original conversation. Then we just kind of stayed in touch, and he had shown me the business plan, and he was just like, take a look at this. What do you think? And I was like, I think you're onto something special here, and that athletes could easily use this resource and this platform as a way to, again, effectively navigate this new space and landscape, right? And we understood education was going to be a huge thing, especially early on. So we had done our best to kind of make sure that we had these resources educational for everybody. That's parents, agents, local business owners, and then obviously specifically athletes.
Mm-hmm.
And I was excited about that. I thought if we can do this right and be the good people behind supporting these athletes, I thought there's a really good chance that we could we can make some.
So how have you seen things grow? And what was it like to get that first athlete kind of in your network and have it take off the way it has?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I was one of the first athletes that we kind of baited with and did some surveying and whatever. But And then obviously the Notre Dame network and the guys that I played with were easy to tap into and get their support and feedback on this product. So obviously super exciting once we passed, some of these thresholds of like 1,000 athletes or even 500 athletes and a certain amount of brand, a certain amount of revenue, right? For us, revenue's obviously spiked and has been doubling over, month over month over the last couple of months. And, doing more deals, doing more thorough and value add deals for brands and for athletes, and figuring out ways to, I just said it, but add more value to athletes and as they're creating content and they want more meaningful partnerships with brands. So figuring out how to do that and how to engage our athletes on a more consistent basis has been kind of the push for us, over this last 6 months or so. And, obviously that helps and that accelerates athletes wanting to engage with NIL more. Like sometimes athletes are just not interested, but if you can educate them and entice them and intrigue them to, know that there's opportunities beyond just a social media post, that there's internship experiences, that there's opportunity for you to earn equity in companies, like that's where the value is.
So yeah, it's the NIL space is, I think people are still figuring it out, right? People are still kind of in the dark on, the different nuance that goes into it, right? So for you guys, how hard was it to kind of educate these athletes on the different opportunities and what that was there for them? And, once you start to educate them, how much have you seen the athletes you work with, how much have you seen that growth kind of come to fruition a little bit?
Yeah. So we just hired a director of athlete education, and Tim Bryson, he headed up student athlete career development at the University of Maryland, former college athlete himself. So for us, athlete education is massively important. He's done a phenomenal job of building out a curriculum that's going to help all of our athletes, navigate this in an educated way, because that adds more value to the brands, that adds more value to our platform. And the athletes are just going about it in a more proficient and professional way. So the more we can support our athletes, right, from taxes, from financial literacy, from brand building and content creation, the better off and the more, the more fruitful our platform is going to be, and the brands that.
So one of the things that I like doing to end things is fire off 5 questions and have you answer them kind of as quickly as possible, but kind of give your little bit of insight. So first question I have for you is what would you say was your most memorable game that you played in?
Definitely either USC 2017 or Michigan 2018.
What's a memory, like a play that you will never forget?
High school year 2014 against Paramus Catholic at MetLife Stadium. A play called Puma, where it's a read on the defensive end, and it's either a pull or give to the running back on a stretch. And I pulled it and I ran. I think it was like a 64-yard run or 54-yard run to kind of seal up the deal against Paramus Catholic.
Who would you say was your toughest opponent?
Georgia 2017, without a doubt, and Roquan Smith.
For you, business-wise, what's a goal that you have business-wise that you would like to accomplish within the next year?
I think it's more about my team and putting my team in the best position to succeed and win, however I can do that. And I know that's a very intangible answer, but, over the next year, it's getting to 10,000 athletes and it's providing them value and it's hitting, certain revenue numbers and, just putting the team in the position to win this whole space.
So last question, what's a piece of advice that you would love for the next generation of student athletes to know as they are either entering recruiting or stepping onto a college campus or going on to that next level?
Um, that's a great question, and there's so many right answers, but I think you have a new muscle to work now in NIL, and it's not just a social media post, but it's communication, it's engaging, it's networking, it's creativity, right? It's all these things kind of bundled into NIL, and if you can take full advantage of it, I think you're going to be so much better off working this muscle at 18 years old to 22. Obviously, then I had the opportunity of just figuring it out after I left school, but managing to do this in the right way at age 18 is going to set you up well beyond your years once you're ready to leave and go into your professional life.
That's awesome. Well, Brandon, I really appreciate you taking the time out. It's been extremely educational, especially as somebody who watched you play. It's been great to meet you. I really appreciate it. Do you have anything else before we let you go today?
No, if you want to learn more about Mogul, you can find us on IG at get.mogul or on the line at Mogul, that's MOGL.online. And we're happy to connect with anybody who wants to learn more about the space and get involved. But thanks so much, Ryan, for having me on, and I really enjoyed our session.